Okay, so welcome everybody to tonight's Lawyers Happy Hour and Networking. And so this is our June 3rd recording. Welcome to June. Happy summer, everybody. I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend and remembered why, the true reason of why we celebrate Memorial Day, as well as enjoying time with our friends and family. So tonight I have the honor of introducing Garrett Smith. Garrett Smith is a non-attorney salesperson who is going to give us some tips and answer some questions for us lowly mere attorneys growing our practices and dispel a few myths and basically be, I know Garrett pretty well. He's always so high energy that I was very happy and eager to invite him to the happy hour tonight. So without further ado,
Awesome.
Garrett, great. And I'm gonna try to pin both our videos if I can do that. And okay, maybe I don't know how to do this correctly. Okay. Let's just spotlight you. And you're full screen. Is Garrett full screen on everybody's?
No,
No,
Nope.
okay.
but I could make him that way if I wanted to.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking for the recording, I want people to see him and not everybody. Not that everybody's not beautiful.
Well, you can do that on your end with the recording, but we get to choose.
You get to choose. Okay, we're gonna roll with it.
We're
So
empowered.
all right, so we're gonna roll with it. We're just gonna launch in. Garrett, just tell us, give us a 2-minute intro of yourself, and then I'll start hitting you with questions.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, thank you so much, Dea, for inviting me, and Ryan, Merrill, Sarah. It's great to meet you guys. I'm glad that you guys are having me here today. My name is Garrett. I'm the director of client engagement at Carrie Schultz, Mr. Men's Rights. It's Schultz and Associates and it's in New Jersey. It's a law firm that has about 5 attorneys, including Carrie Schultz herself. And I just started in December 1st. I got on and started doing sales January 1st of this year. What I would like to do is I just like give a little background. Today we're talking about sales. For any of this to make sense, I just want to let you guys know what I've done in sales. So the main thing is I've done a lot of different sales programs. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us here have. For me, the one that stuck the most was S3, Smart Systematic Selling. It's something that I spent $50 on when it first came out back last year. For me, it was the first time I ever heard of it. And it connected. And after that, I've stuck with it ever since. I've been part of it and going to it every single day for the last year, almost a year and a half now. So I say all this because one thing about S3 is when we go through the training, the more time you spend, after you go through all the videotapes, like that's great. But the next thing that we do is we actually practice it, and we call them dojos. Theophan built it around, martial arts, and it's just a way of keeping track of where you are at. So as you go through this, you gain different belts, and there's requirements going to the actual practices and practicing different skills. And these skills I'm going to talk about, some of these skills are reversing, some of these skills are asking curious questions, active listening. We're going to talk more about that as I get into this. But I want you guys also to know that this is how I got into a non-attorney sales position, because I had no idea this even existed. I started in a non-attorney sales position last year, September 2020. I started at Charlotte Christian Law. Started there, did 2 months. They were not at the stage to have an extra salesperson on board. But through S3, Carrie Schultz was actually in S3, and she practiced with me, and she offered me a position at her firm, and it's been a great fit ever since. So that's a little background. And also I wanted to introduce those terms to everyone so that as we talk about sales, everything I reference is all around S3. It's one of the programs that I feel makes the most sense to me. I mean, it connects in my brain, but it also is I've applied it to every aspect of my life. It's not just sales. I like to call it effective communication, period. So with that being said, there's a little introduction about myself in a nutshell and what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Great. Remind us what S3 stands for one more time.
So S3 stands for Smart Systematic Selling.
That
And
sounds
I'm going to
great.
I'm just going to be calling it S3. So that's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think that's definitely something that, well, definitely for me, the systematic part. I think we all have smart down. We certainly were smart and we spent a lot of money getting smarter. But now we need some skills. So just curious, Garrett, like what are some of the worst things an attorney can say in the consultation?
So that's a great question. And if I was doing my S3 hat on right now, I would go, Dea, when you say worst things, what do you mean? Because that could be a lot of different things. Now I'm going to take worst thing as how do you lose a sale really fast?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Or
what I was getting at.
so what I would say to that is there's a lot. Every single person's going to have their own emotional trigger word that will set them off. Now we don't have a crystal ball. We can't guess this. We don't know what that's going to be. But one of the big things that I've found that happens is we get a lot of clients that come from other attorneys and they come saying that they're not being listened to, they're not being asked questions, and there's no communication. What I've seen in my dealing with firms is there's a lack of effective communication. Basically, there's a misunderstanding. One person's talking on this level and the other person's on this level. They may be saying the same thing, but it's not being heard the same way. So what's I would say this is, as an attorney, you're stuck between a hard place and a really hard rock, because when you're in a consultation, your word is gold. And that's a great thing because they believe you. You can help me. Great. Awesome. Here's my money. I've got it. Let's go. I'm signed up. The problem is what I've found and noticed that when we speak in a consultation, we don't promise anything. We don't guarantee anything. This could happen. This should happen. Now, to us as in this situation, salesperson, we know we're not giving an exact word, but because you're an attorney, the PNC, potential new client, is like, oh yeah, that's what I want. You can get my outcome. Oh, great. And they hang on to that. Now we fast forward 3 months and that outcome doesn't happen. And you have to swerve because we know in the legal process, a monkey wrench could be thrown in, or the opposing party could do something else that makes it so that your legal plan has to change. But that potential new client is only going to remember the fact that you told them that you could get their outcome at that very first meeting. And I get a lot of clients that come to us saying all of that. And the big thing that we do to make sure that that doesn't happen is set realistic expectations from the start. So the worst thing that you could do is say all of that as this could happen, this should happen. What needs to be said is, I want to make sure I'm setting realistic expectations from the start. Now, this could happen, but we don't know what the opposing party is going to do. That's a big thing because as a potential new client, you don't really know much about the law or how it works. You think an attorney knows everything and whatever they say is exactly how it happens. There's no this gray area. They don't understand that at all. So you need to make sure that's very clear as you speak and go through. Otherwise, they hang on to those exact words you say. The other thing is never say guarantee. That's probably the worst thing ever is I guarantee I can help work towards this. Okay, I know you said help work towards it. You didn't guarantee that you're going to get it. They just heard guarantee. And if you don't get that, they're done. And what's worse is it's bad publicity because they're gonna probably leave a really bad comment.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, there's a couple things in there, Garrett. Definitely. They say 80% of attorneys overvalue their cases. And I've seen people do it all the time. Now, present company excluded, but some people always interview the client and they always tell them that they're going to win the case. And then when the discovery starts coming in and the documents start coming in, you realize that you've only listened to your client's side of the story, which by its definition cannot be the whole truth. It just cannot. We only as humans remember our side of the story. So you've got to leave yourself some room on that estimating. So and definitely in the world of social media reviews, no promises for outcome. You know, we can be good fighters and we can be good advocates, but the outcome is, you know, up to the decider. And who knows if somebody burnt his toast or he got in a fender bender that morning, he or she got in a fender bender that morning and just decide they don't like whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to dish on the judiciary. Please let me apologize on that if that came out wrong. But there are circumstances completely beyond our control as attorneys. So that's awesome. Also, I found, and this, I don't want to steal your show here, Garrett, but people watch too much TV around the courtroom dramas. Okay, they think that everything gets tied up in a nice, neat little bow. And our culture just thinks that. They just think that somebody's going to come in, they're going to beat the sledgehammer, they're going to get my day in court, everything's going to go my way. And so I think clients are already coming forward thinking that that's the service that they're going to be hiring versus someone who's going to negotiate, who's going to swap out those little minuscule artifacts we were talking about earlier, and make things just kind of progress. So kind of along that vein, can I pre-qualify? Like, what do you suggest at like pre-qualifying people? Tire kickers or people that, yeah.
No, and that's a great question, Dea. And I would reverse it and just say, when you say pre-qualifier, you know, what are you trying to qualify? What is your qualified type of potential new client? Now, once you identify what that is, there's certain things we can do. One thing you just mentioned, tire kickers. So we got people that think that a service from one law firm is going to be the exact same at the next one. When I go to Ryan, it's going to be the exact same if I went to Merle, or if I went to Dea, or if I went to Sarah, or if we went to Emmanuel. No. That's not how it works. But they have no idea. So one way that at our firm, Schultz and Associates, what we do is we have an intake specialist. And at that level, they get basic information. And to get on my schedule, it costs $225. So we have a process and we explain why we do this. We make sure we set realistic expectations up front. And if they don't like that and they feel that it is not right, it's not a good fit, that's okay. Now, so what that does, that gets rid of a lot of people that are just trying to, I want a free consultation, and whoever sells me the best on it, then I'm going with them, or whoever has the cheapest price. That's one way to get rid of those price shoppers. Now, the next one is, I want legal advice that's accurate right away, but I may not retain you, but I'm willing to pay for a consultation. Okay, so they're in the consultation, and now we're going through the needs assessment. In S3, we have 5 steps. The second step is the needs assessment. We find out what their actual need is. We do that by asking curious questions and practice active listening. Now, at this time, if they're constantly asking legal questions, wanting accurate legal answers, you have options. As attorneys, you can do well, you should do this, and it could look like this. But again, warning, they could just take that information, run with it, or they could hold you to that. And if 3 months down the road, they're not getting that result, they're gone anyway. Again, stuck between a hard place and a rock. Now, the other option, though, you have is, as a non-attorney salesperson, we can't answer any legal questions. So as you're pushing back and reversing them and asking them more questions to find out about it, if they're getting upset and mad and saying, if you don't answer this question, I'm out of here, you can't answer it. And they're not okay with your process, so they're not going to be a good client for you. So these are some of the ways that we disqualify potential new clients. So that way we don't waste our time. And more importantly, our attorneys aren't pulling their hair out.
I love the hair comment, Carrie. That's great. That's very interesting. Because I think as attorneys, like we're professional service people, so we are in the act of serving. We're also very analytical. We're used to issue spotting and qualifying, and I've learned over the years, and I've been, becoming much more of an emotionally intelligent, much more of an active communication type person. But definitely right out of law school, it was like the little clinky thing that you drop at the top, and it was like click, 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 click. So somebody would be explaining to me their issue, and I was immediately like issue spotting. I was like, okay, we file this, we file this, we file this, we get this in discovery, we get this in the whatever. And it would just bleh, it would just blurt right out of my mouth. And honestly, I think the reaction was like, this person's speaking over my head. This person is like, blah, 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 blah. She's got all these letters after her name. I'm completely intimidated. I, of course, always had a free consultation. And I think that's just some of our training and some of our intelligence as a fault in going through some of these legal processes. So I'm really excited that you said don't answer the questions in the consultation. I love it. I love it. So what happens when somebody, like you said, qualifying? Like, what if they can't afford it? What are some of the tactful ways that we can handle this?
Well, that's simple. When we start talking about money right after we're done identifying they've got a need for our service, the next step is then to talk about the money. And there's a variety of ways to go about this, but we like to just talk about it right away. If they can't afford our $5,000 retainer, we don't have a payment plan. We don't have an installment plan. That's just what it is. And as sympathetic as one can be in it, it's understanding, hey, as much as I want to help you, we can't move forward unless you even have the money to submit to any law firm, not just us, but to anyone. At that point, you have to disqualify them because there's nothing that you can say that's going to make them have money all of a sudden. Because a big thing that we believe in S3, and it's human nature, but when someone is in enough pain, they'll do whatever it takes and they'll pay whatever it takes to make that pain go away. ... If they have the money.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that we're doing anybody any favors. And I certainly, as a solo, I'd stretch it as far as I could. I'd make payment plan. I did basically everything you just said, payment plans, free consults, giving information, giving things away. And then one time I actually was with a client, and he was a contractor, because that's what I specialize in, construction. And he had really gone out of his way for this construction client, really, 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 really. And then she didn't have the money to make the final payment. And he asked me straight up, he said, Dea, what did I do wrong? And I said, poor client selection. It's like, you are already fighting upstream to make this work. Again, big heart, really wanted to make this work, really wanted this to work out, stretched everything as much as possible. But then, of course, there was no give at the end of the day. So that's just something that we have to learn, that we're not doing anybody any favors by shortchanging ourselves early on in the process. So awesome. What about again, present company excluded, what about people or attorneys that really want to impress their clients? They have a bunch of awards, they have a big, I don't know, fancy office with a bunch of trophies and printed out judgments and verdicts. How do you feel about that?
I love this question. And this is, I'm not going to reverse you on this one, but this one is, do you want that type of client where whoever's the biggest, the baddest, whatever they feel, the PNC feels is the biggest, the baddest, the most bestest attorney? Because what that tells me, what I would infer from that is, you could be 3 months in and they find someone else they feel is better than you, better at communication, better at getting their outcome faster through their perception. They may jump ship like that. They may jump ship 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I've talked to PNCs who have had 6 or 7 different attorneys. So that's what I would say. Is that the type of qualified potential new client you'd want to spend an hour in a consultation with, or longer?
Yeah, I love that, Garrett. That reminds me of like people who are dating as stepping stones. They're looking for the bigger, better deal. So that's awesome. That's a great way. Now there are some places that you can qualify. It's some peer reviewed. There's chambers. There's super lawyers, things like that, where you're actually peer reviewed as an attorney. And of course, having that in your sig line is nice. It's nice. It's not overdone. It's not loud. It's not.
And Dea, I should say this: I encourage, and I think you should, on everyone's website, all your accolades should be there because they need to know who you are. If they want to do the research, that's fine. Now, but if they're in the consultation calling you out, saying, what awards are you? How effective are you? What is your conversion rate? What's your win ratio? What's my percentage? Now, that's when you need to ask yourself, is this where you want to brag about yourself and potentially get this type of client whoever's got the highest number wins? Or do we disqualify them because you know what, if that's what's important to you, that's not a good fit?
Yeah, that's great. And there was something that was just pointed out the other day, like if the score is 100, like if you've never had a loss or a pushback, then there's something wrong with, either you're settling too many cases way early for too little. There's some sort of issue there. So on the kind of furthering this a little bit, how do I stand out? I don't want to say competing, but let's just say competing with other attorneys for clients.
No, oh, come on. We've all been there where the client goes, hey, I've got 4 or 5 appointments with other attorneys, other law firms. I think 9 times out of 10, that's usually the case because most times people are desperate. People don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. It's the era of options on options on options on their fingertip. That's great. We acknowledge it. And how we stand out is by listening to them. 110%. The biggest way we do this is we have to have bond and rapport with the people we're talking to. And yes, that is so hard to do when you're not in person. You're not able to shake hands. Seeing expressions only go so far. Cameras are sometimes okay. The lighting's not that good. Well, you need to do everything in your power to make sure that you look and your background and everything is great when you're talking to someone via Zoom. And in person, same way, dress to impress. Because that bond and rapport and listening to them and having them talk is by far going to set you aside from anyone else, because studies have shown that being listened to is so close to feeling love that sometimes it can be confused. That's huge. Listening, actively listening. Now, the big thing is, how much do you listen? Because we're not therapists. There's a fine line, and that's a skill. And everyone's always constantly refining that. But the biggest thing is active listening. And what we do in S3 is the client should be talking 70% of the time. And as sales professionals, we should be talking 30% of the time.
That's great.
That's how you stand out.
Yeah, that's great. And that clues you in on why so many people fall in love with their therapists.
I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious.
That's awesome. All right. So what if I am talking to this client and I'm listening and I know that they are going to be a pain in my booty? How do I let them down easy and get them to go ahead and move on to somebody else?
Well, there's options. We got options here. So the first option is what I've been instructed to do, and Carrie and I have a very great relationship. If there's someone that feels like it's going to be extra work, we'll put in a positive spin. They need extra hand-holding through this process. Interpret it how you'd like. The retainer then doubles. To start off, it's a $10,000 retainer. Maybe we might do a $7,500 depending on how much hand-holding is going to be needed.
Mm-hmm.
But our big thing is if we just did a $5,000 retainer and they need a ton of hand-holding, we know that retainer is not going to last long, and we know they're not going to want to replenish it that fast. So we would start off with the $10,000 retainer. Now, that's also knowing that they most likely aren't going to pay that $10,000 retainer, so they may go somewhere else. Now, let's say $10,000 retainer, like they're not going to bite it, it's fine. And then they're like, that's fine, yeah, I want to go with you. And you're like, wait a minute, no, I don't want this. I don't. You have that option. You are a human. You have the choice to say no. How do we do that? You let them know that it's not going to be a good fit. Professionally, you don't think it's going to work. And you would be more than happy to refer them to someone else that it will be a better fit. It's all about the fit, because that's a huge aspect. So when you get along with your client, I'm not an attorney, but I'm going to guess you probably have a better working relationship and a better outcome There's not as much screaming and yelling and intense nights of, again, pulling your hair out. So that's how we go about doing it at our law firm. But again, everyone's got options.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that it's the good fit thing, because it is, you're going to spend a lot of time with this person, and it may not be a good fit. So like a therapist or like a CPA or somebody like that, you're going to really want to know that you can work well with this person. And like ultimately it's like a performance contract. It's like a singer. If you hire somebody to sing and they don't want to sing, they're not, I mean, you can't drag them out on stage and stick the microphone in their mouth and physically make them do it. It's just not possible. That's why we have other kinds of damages for stuff like that. So definitely, I like that. I like that good fit. And that, is this going to be a win-win? Are we going to have a good working relationship? And maybe someone else would be a better fit.
Yeah. And Dave, to put the cherry on top, what I always use is, just because a law firm can represent you, that doesn't mean they're the best fit for you. And that can work for you. It's a cop out for yourself as well. Hey, we're not a good fit. And in your head, you're like, wow, this would kill me if I took on this case. Or the client can then tell you, you know what, I don't think it's a good fit. So it works for both people.
That's awesome. Great. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I had. I would love to open it up to the rest of our guests to ask some questions. I see that most people are refilling their beverage right now, which is totally fine. But go ahead and come off mute. Anybody who has some questions for Garrett.
I had a question. So you were talking about, you deal with the $5,000 retainer, and I have dealt with this both as an attorney, but also as a friend. When somebody comes back from meeting with somebody, especially if it's a divorce case, they hear retainer amount and they think that's how much that's the total amount they're going to be paying. And I make it clear, as clear as I can, both in the, upfront and in the retainer letter, this is not the total, especially on litigation matters, because it can go up. And even on, things like elder law matters where, we might be doing a whole lot more work on stuff. We might be having to do things like, I've had a client where we had to do, for lack of a better term, forensic accounting, because we've got like we're trying to find all the husband's assets. So we make sure that we haven't missed anything so that he doesn't get disqualified.
Right.
And, that takes some time. There is some, grunt work involved in going through the Byzantine hold system of various financial institutions. And, people got to pay for it. There's no two ways about it. That's part of our job. But,
So Ryan, from what I'm hearing you say, would you say the question would be, what's a way to handle and set those expectations so that people aren't? Yeah. Okay. That's a great question. I think, Ryan, you hit it right on the head. It literally, I think 9 times out of 10, the question is, after they hear $5,000 retainer, so that's everything, right? Like, that's going to take care of my whole case. So my next response is, thank you so much for telling me that you can, $5,000 is in your budget. But, and that's when I go in and let them know, this case most likely will go beyond 5,000. And I explain to them that if it's hotly litigated, if it needs mediation, there's just so many factors that go into the overall cost. And then I ask them, do you have the resources to replenish your retainer if your case goes that way? And at that point, they go, wait a minute, how much past 5,000 is it going to go? So then the next thing is, I explain how our replenishment program works and let them know that each month we ask them to replenish what was used. It's like keeping your gas tank always at full. So after I explain that and explain that we refund the unbilled portion of our retainer, I was like, now, after knowing all that, do you have the resources for a $5,000 retainer and replenishment payments if your case is one that goes this way? Now, at that point, you'll get 1 or 2 answers. Oh, no, heck no, I can't do it. And then they disqualified themselves right then. So that's great. You can't help them, and I'm sorry, we have to part ways. Or, oh my gosh, I mean, I guess I can do that. Then you can move on. So that's how we identify and make sure that it's very clear that this case is going to cost more than $5,000. And we've had a lot of good, I should say this, we've had a lot of good responses from setting that realistic expectation in the discovery session, in the consultation. But there's many ways to go about doing it.
I mean, that sounds great, because I think people are not clear. Again, they're going with what they've seen on television. They're used to things being flat fee. They're used to things being pretty negotiable. Like, you go to buy a car, you always, there's a lot of back and forth there. It's sort of what we think. And then you think of the amount, and you think about like what you need to do, and then the longevity of it, especially those of us who do litigation. I mean, there's sometimes no end in sight for that. So it's very difficult to project, even having been in it for many, many years now. It's difficult to project. And I feel that everybody should be really, really, really realistic about making sure people have both the financial stamina and the emotional stamina to do that. If I can put a little plug for our Tuesday morning masterminds, I do the same program, or the same group. We do a lawyer's mastermind on the 4th Tuesday of the month at 9. And this is some of the things we talk about, the emotional hand holding, how to be better communicators, and basically how to support each other in the practice, which is, sometimes it's the wild, wild west out there. So more questions from the participants and the people here enjoying the happy hour.
I have another question.
Go for it.
All right. So you said you had 5 steps. I got like 2 or 3 out of them.
So yeah, I got you, Ryan. So we've got the agenda step. We've got the needs assessment step. We've got the money step. We've got the decision maker step. And we've got the presentation step.
So what is decision maker and what's presentation?
So those are really great questions. And that's more, I would be more than happy to dive deeper into what that is and all about S3. In fact, I'm going to put my contact information in here. I'll just give you a decision maker is who is the decision maker. And the presentation is actually the features and benefits. So we don't actually tell them all about the features and benefits of how we can help them until the very end, because there's no reason to present to a not qualified potential new client.
Yeah, I think that also might fall into my little clinky game thing. I would be like just telling people stuff all out of the get-go, and they may not know what I'm talking about. They may not need everything I'm talking about, and they certainly might not be able to afford everything I'm talking about. We might have to do a plan, a law plan of action with within their budget. I know we talked about not maybe doing that, but sometimes there are ways that you can strategize and say, okay, we can do this, this, and this with the amount you can afford, and then we're going to have to cut it off. If you need to do this, this, and this, then you're going to need to come back with a larger budget. Great. And then the decision makers. That's kind of a weird question. What's with that?
So the decision maker is, I've ran into multiple times that rich Aunt Sally or Uncle Greg is paying for everything, and they need to be a part of the decision. And, you could go say everything in the world and go, oh, this is great. I'll go tell Uncle Greg this. And then Uncle Greg goes, no, you're going to go with my lawyer over here. And you don't even have a chance to even talk about it. So, in S3, they teach us certain ways to go about making sure that we've got all the decision makers in front of us before we actually present to them.
Yeah, that makes sense, because by the time they take it home, and it's like the game of gossip, by the time they take it home or wherever they've got to tell somebody, they're going to be, well, this lawyer told me that, or this non-attorney salesperson told me this. And, again, you'll be like, oh, just use George down the street. He owes me some favors or whatever. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, in my business, we call that the family consultation.
Mm.
We, with estate planning, we offer for a fee, again, more fee, more time, more fee, family consultation. And frequently, the other thing is, this happened recently where, sometimes mom or dad, whoever, one of their children gets to them and says, you want to cut out the other one, they're not doing enough for you, or something like that. And sometimes they get to one and the first one says, you got to cut out my sibling. Then they go to sibling two and they're like, what do you mean cut me out? I did X, Y, and Z for you. I deserve at least as much as sibling one. It happens all the time. Families and money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Messy.
The lots goes into it, and there's a lot of emotion.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
emotion, a lot of attachment to those little kitschy items, as well as large chunks of money.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan, how often are you able to get everybody to the table? There's usually some outlier that's.
It depends. It really does. A lot of times, I mean, ultimately, mom and dad, if we're doing estate planning, they're the ultimate client. It's a little different when we're dealing with elder law issues as to who the ultimate client is, because it's rarely, the person going in the nursing home. It's usually either their kid or, the adult child or children trying to preserve mom or dad's wealth, or what they can of mom or dad's wealth, or it's the spouse trying to keep from being impoverished because they're going into a nursing home and they don't have $13,000 a month to 15,000 a month to pay for that. They've got, so they need, and they still got to be able to live someplace. If they lose the house, well, that's not good, right? So, it's also a matter of managing expectations and explaining to people, translating from lawyerese and regulations to English.
Yep.
And I think that is my sauce. That's the thing I do best, is I make sure that people understand stuff in English pretty well, and make sure they've asked their questions and understand what I can do and what I can't do. I had a client that I lost big on business. I told him, look, if you hire me, you've hired me late in the process. This is a litigation matter. I can throw a Hail Mary for you, but it is a Hail Mary. And those are, sometimes they win and sometimes they don't. And you still got to pay for my time one way or the other. And he was appreciative of that, because I didn't tell him I can win this case. I said, I'm throwing a Hail Mary on this one, but I think I can save your business. Sometimes the courts will, reopen. Sometimes the courts will delay. I think I can. I'm not sure, but I'm willing to try. And at that point, he was willing to try, and he appreciated it after, even though I didn't win. Refunded the rest of his retainer, talked to him afterwards. He understood, though.
Yeah, that's good. You set realistic expectations from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Try to.
It helps. It really does. And I think that's something that we don't learn sometimes until later on. You get excited in the early years and you're like, I know I can win it every single one. You feel like Superman. And then you learn.
Nah, nobody wins every. I mean,
No.
you got to think of it more like the baseball analogy. 300 hitter is really good, but that means you fail 7 out of 10 times.
Exactly.
You can't win on everything.
You can't. Yeah.
I mean, I've had cases where I cleaned the clock of the other side, and other cases where I was doing great and then my client flaked on me. And, I mean, Garrett, you can understand this is a family law case. I mean, both sides are suing each other. I get the case removed in one county into my county. I've got it on my terms, everything. Then the pandemic hit. Then my client flaked and didn't do anything he was supposed to do. Became, almost incommunicado. And that was like, you know what? That's enough of this family law crap for me.
That does happen. Yeah, that does happen.
It
does.
is tough. It's litigation stress is tough on both the attorneys and the clients.
Yeah. That's why they
Yeah.
have that. That's why that meme was running around, lawyer meme about Facebook, around Facebook and other places. It was a picture of like some guy in his 70s saying, litigation's not stressful at all, or family law is not stressful at all. And then it says Bob, age 25.
Age 20, right, exactly. It's pretty funny how that works out. It's yeah, dealing with the emotions and all that. And another shameless plug for why y'all should come to the emotional intelligence talk that we have every month. So back to the panel. We're here at the end of the hour. We did shorten these to an hour because hey, you're not paying for 2 hours of parking. And we're all zoomed out by the end of the day and the end of the week. So I really appreciate my regulars, Ryan and Meryl. I appreciate our guest speaker, Garrett, and Sarah and Emmanuel. Thank you for joining us. Totally get it. This is totally participation at will, not required. For those of you watching this on the recording, I will have Garrett's information in there, as well as links to come to one of our next events. So without further ado, enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Hey, Dea, before you pop off,
Oh.
guess who I saw the other